The Starr D'Amico Show brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel.
Hi, I'm Audrey. My parents, Chuck and Evie, are too busy caring about your pets, so I'm here to remind you to check out a family-owned store, Little Bear Pet Supplies. Can you believe it's been there for almost 30 years? They know that your pets are family too, and they've made shopping easy this holiday season, with fun toys and healthy treats that you won't find everywhere. They even offer fast home delivery, and my brother and I sometimes help too. Please shop local this year.
Thanks, Audrey. Come visit us at 4152 St. Catherine Street West, littlebearonline.com, or find us on the Uber Eats app.
Well, there we are. Took a second to get going, fire up that engine again. Happy Sunday, and welcome to the holiday edition of the live version of Starr and D'Amico. There's Marco. I'm Shaun. Thank you so much for being with us for the next 60 minutes or so, Marco, as the return to form, we hope anyway, for Habs Nation, as the Montreal Canadiens wake up from their holiday slumber. Third in the Atlantic. They've won 3 of their last 4, Marco, and have scored 17 goals over that 4-game sample size. Pretty good for the youngest team in the National Hockey League, as it was a year ago today, December 28th last year, where Jakub Dobeš made his debut, and the Montreal Canadiens really took a stranglehold in the second half of that season. How are you feeling going into a game day at 5 o'clock in Tampa Bay tonight?
I love mid-afternoon games on Sundays. Yeah. I think that's the way. So 5 p.m. is great for me. I think it's just always hard to gauge this time period. Like, half the people watching this show, including myself, don't know what day it is this week right now. Yeah, I figured out it was Sunday just before I was coming onto the show. So I could just imagine the players and so on. So it's just a weird time. Hard to really gauge what's going on where. The Canadiens are going to be playing in Tampa tonight. It's probably going to sound like a home game. Same thing when they play Florida later on this week. So it is, always a good time for me in terms of this time of year. It's very weird. So how do you assess tonight? How do you assess where the Canadiens are going to be? Well, let's start off with the fact that Tampa Bay played last night.
A hard game against Florida.
Okay. Now here's the trap. What was the score the last time the Montreal Canadiens played Tampa?
What was it? 6-1 or something? Yeah, they got thumped. They got thumped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they were just coming off a back-to-back on that game as well. And the Canadiens were at home.
Correct.
Waiting for them, right? Yeah. So it is a trap game in the sense that you have to be a little careful in what you've done against them and how the game matchups exist. The one thing that I find is going to be very interesting, though, is that the Montreal Canadiens, when it comes to their goaltending, that's the thing you have to watch out for. Jacob Fowler, we've been talking about this for a while now, but Jacob Fowler's favorite team growing up as a kid was the Montreal Canadiens.
Uh-huh.
Then it was the Pittsburgh Penguins. And into his later years, because he is a Florida native, it was the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so he's getting the trifecta of playing for one of his childhood teams, soundly beating the Pittsburgh Penguins, and now having a shot at Tampa Bay. And that this isn't new, but if the Canadiens have any shot of winning this game, it's definitely going to go through Fowler.
Well, there's lots to get into. We'll of course, get into all of your live comments throughout today's episode. Like and subscribe as always. Thank you so much for that. As the Montreal Canadiens will play game number 3 on what is a long 7-game road trip. It began with the shootout loss to the Penguins, and then it got followed up with our live show at Public House on Peel, with the Canadiens thumping the Bruins, scoring 4 times in that third in a 6-2 final. Montreal back in action this week. They're going to play a bunch, starting today at 5, at Florida on Tuesday night, at Carolina on Thursday, and then back to I'm ready for the weekend doubleheaders to come to an end, FYI. But not this weekend. St. Louis and Dallas coming up back-to-back as the Canadiens wrap up this marathon. We'll get into Michael Hage and how well, he's scoring. How is he looking for Team Canada at the World Juniors in Minnesota, who are off to a interesting 2-0 start, that wild game with Czechia, and then Latvia does what Latvia tends to do against the Canadians, and they bottle it up and get good goaltending. But Canada prevails in that one in overtime and a Michael Hage game winner. So we'll get into all of that and a lot more. But let's start with the Montreal Canadiens, Marco, again, navigating a maze of injuries. The ones are well documented, of course, in Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook and Caden Gooley, Patrick Laine, and down the list we go. But fresh out of the Christmas break, the news not great for Jake Evans, out 4 to 6 weeks with an LBI. But timing is everything. They got Phil Deneau. But how impactful do you imagine this Evans injury to be for the next month and a half, let's say?
Well, with the addition of Phil Deneau, I don't think it's going to be that bad. So I don't think it's problematic for the Canadiens per se. It would have been problematic before the Phil Deneau trade, 100%, because then you'd be basically you'd be basically putting Veleno and Beck as your 2 bottom 6 centers. And as much as I've liked the play of Joe Veleno of late, and I think that Owen Beck is starting to find his rhythm and his groove, I just don't think that's necessarily what you want to go with for 6 weeks. So it's good news, and I would add that it's 4 to 6 weeks from the moment that Evans was put on IR.
Right.
So it's actually 3 to 5 weeks from today, which, if that comforts anyone, it could help them. But the Canadiens with injuries this year is like 2022, 2023 levels at this point. So it has been fun. But thankfully, like I said, Phil Deneau takes over his responsibilities. You could have a Veleno or a Beck on the 4th line, and I don't think it hurts you right now with the way that they're playing. So I think it matches up well. And it really does speak to the importance of having depth down the middle. Finally, having depth down the middle allows you to lose 2 of your centers, because Kirby Dach was playing center at the moment of his injury, and I don't think anybody's worried. Whereas 6 weeks ago, this would have been like, pack it in. The Canadiens have 2 rookies and a Joe Veleno as their second, third, and fourth line centers.
And it's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but that old whack-a-mole just keeps coming up. You think you solve one issue and then something else pops up. But very encouraging to see how the Canadiens have navigated again this maze of injuries, and right now Habs Nation waking up watching a team with 45 points, sitting third in their division, right, tied with the Lightning in points. The Lightning have as many games played as the Canadiens, but they have one more victory at 21. Detroit at 47 points and 22 wins. So obviously very much in the thick of things. As Marco alluded to off the top, it is Jacob Fowler getting the start in Florida. Personally, I love the way Martin St. Louis kind of answered the question from reporters who asked him, why Fowler? Why did you go with Fowler? Sam Montembeault recalled his conditioning stint over with Laval, so the Canadiens are going to roll with 3 goaltenders. Let's get into how you interpreted the coach kind of dealing with the 3 goalie question, dealing with Sam Montembeault and his eventual reinsertion into the Canadiens lineup. But off the hop, I like the Fowler start. I like Marty's kind of rationale or logic behind it when he referenced kind of the schedule. Fowler's the one that's been playing. He's played 2 of the last 3, 4-0 shutout, backstopping the Canadiens to a 6-2 win in Boston. I personally think it's the right call. How did you interpret the way the coach kind of answered the Q&A around his goaltenders now?
I mean, what else was he supposed to answer? I find like they've I don't want to say they backed themselves into it, because it's great for Fowler that he's able to perform the way he is, but like, they've put themselves in this situation. They didn't
Yeah.
want a 3 goalie carousel. They didn't have to call up Jacob Fowler, but where would they be over the last 3 weeks without the performances of Jacob Fowler? Right.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
a catch-22. And I think what's really important here is that you have to be able to properly insulate the player. You have to say the right things. You have to make sure that the player knows that he's still a rookie, but at the same time, the team is looking out for him, and the team is making sure that, they're going to play their best in front of him. Like, it's all the little things, right? It's the details in what's going on with the player as he kind of makes his way through it. Because one of the most important things, and I think, this is one of the human sides of the game that I don't feel is highlighted enough. But when you're a young player, the first 4 or 5 games, adrenaline is through the roof, right? And he's had Saturday night games at the Bell Center. He's had some big matchups that he's had to play against as well. What I want to see is what happens when things come back down to earth, and that's where the Canadiens need to be careful, because you can't expect a goalie to just keep going like this. Eventually, there's going to be a little bit of adversity, and that's 100% okay.
Yeah.
But they have to be ready for that. And so when you talk about a goaltender and you talk about the 3 goalie rotation, no one wants a 3 goalie rotation.
Nobody.
Nobody. Trust me, the Canadiens don't want it. The reason they're on LTIR right now is because they have a 3 goalie rotation. If Jacob Fowler were playing in Laval right now, they wouldn't have to put anybody on LTIR. That's the thing of it right now. So they're doing this because they have no choice. And I think that's great for Jacob Fowler. But, the pressure is going to be on Sam Montembeault, and they're going to give him the net. They eventually will give him the net.
For sure. It's coming this week.
The season.
Yeah.
Before the end of this year, calendar year. And so Jacob Fowler getting Tampa makes sense. The real question is, when do you put in Montembeault? And I think that's really the question they have to put themselves in. My personal opinion, I think Montembeault probably he draws in against Florida, like the next game. And then you give Dolbesh the one after that. And that way you're kind of running a 3 goalie roti. No one's out for more than a week, and so on and so forth. I don't like it. I don't think anybody likes it. But the Canadiens are in this situation right now where they can't send Fowler down, or else I'm pretty sure a grand majority of the folks in this group chat, in our chat here and watching, or a lot of people on social media, are not going to be very confident watching this team play against powerhouses like Carolina, Dallas. These are big games coming up, so that you got to be careful. You have to be very careful.
Well, that to me, like, the bigger question for me is, like, we both agree, and I think most people watching, listening at this moment on this game day, Habs and Lightning at 5:00, is, so fine, Montembeault's going to get a game, right? And I don't have a strong disagreement that hypothetically he gets the New Year's Eve game on the 30th, so that'll be Tuesday night at Florida. And the Canadiens, as I remind you, play in the new year, January 3rd and 4th at St. Louis, at Dallas. The bigger question for me is, how many games, like, what if, if you play the what if game, if Montembeault plays well, let's say hypothetically Tuesday against Florida, great. You keep it going. You keep the rotation as you outlined. But what if he doesn't play well? How many more kicks of the can do they give Sam Montembeault before, do they let it ride out and he gets fewer starts and they go more with Dolbesh, more with Fowler? Because there's nothing about Fowler's game, to your point about, like, people commentating, people watching this game, there's nothing about Fowler's game that suggests he should even sniff a demotion back to Laval at any point, right? So I'm very interested about the threshold of, okay, we're trying to get Montembeault going. I mean, when we look at the schedule, it's game number 38 today. I don't know the answer. I don't know how many more, 2, 3, 1, 4, 5, let the season play out. I think it's a very, very tricky spot. They put themselves in. Well, they put themselves in by circumstance. They didn't have a goalie who could stop a puck regularly until Jacob Fowler showed up.
Yeah, I think, I think this is the issue when it comes to goalies. I think this market has been spoiled beyond belief when it comes to quality goaltending.
Yeah.
And that's not their fault. It's not, like, we've witnessed excellent goaltenders here. But Samuel Montembeault, according to many, was the reason why the Canadiens didn't pick higher in the last drafts. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he's French Canadian. It has everything to do with the fact that he's still signed to next year, and you
Exactly.
can't just get rid of him.
Yeah.
You can't. So, this idea that this is like the NFL and you can just cut a player, guys, that's not how it works. And so if you want to trade the player, which from what I could see, a lot of people don't mind doing, if you want to trade the player and go with 2 rookies as your goalie moving forward, hoping to make the playoffs, that's a choice. And I respect it. But the way that I see it is players don't forget how to play hockey.
Of course.
He's going through a rough patch. We've all gone through rough patches. Is he going to find himself out of that rough patch? I don't know. My crystal ball won't tell me that. But what I will tell you is if he is put on waivers, what happens if he's not claimed?
Right.
Right. You just have him in Laval, and then that problem comes along next year again. Like that. This is the problem. I would assume, and from what I've heard, probably likely that he would go unclaimed because of the $3.1 million price tag. And then you have him in Laval. It's kind of an awkward situation. And then you're going to have to try to trade him. Like, I just don't see it working out. And that's if he doesn't get claimed. And if he does get claimed, and then knock on wood, there's an injury to the player, to any of the 2 goalies, you're calling up Kaapo Kähkönen as your backup.
Yes.
Like, this is why I say, like, I understand the hype about Fowler and I understand having to play him, but you can't run a team like a fan. That's the only unfortunate part. There's a very real reality that within the next 10 days, Jacob Fowler is sent down to Laval. And I'm going to duck for cover when that happens.
Oof.
And so you're gonna have to ride it out. You can't have 3 goalies long term. And if you can't trade Montembeault and you don't want to expose yourself to waivers by putting this guy on waivers and then having 3 goalies, if he's claimed, 3 goalies with an NHL contract.
Yeah.
Things get very, very, like we've seen it with the injuries to the Canadiens forwards. Things get very tricky very quickly. You do not just throw away depth. So I understand wanting to win the next game, but if you want to win the season, or if you want to do what's best for the players, there has to be more in the thought process behind it than simply playing the best player in the next game. That's the strategy.
I mean, if I map it out, listen, I think if a world ever exists where Montembeault gets waived, I do think he gets claimed. I'd be shocked if he didn't, honestly, today. I mean, so many teams are dealing with so many injuries. And, I think as a lot of NHL teams tend to operate, they look at, the overall picture, not so much what's going on in the first 37, 38 games of a season. But, like, I could see a world where, Fowler continues to play consistent hockey, makes big stops and big moments, keeps his team in it. And if Sam Montembeault, gets slightly above average, I could see a scenario where Jakub Dobeš is the guy that goes down to Laval and takes the net as the number 1 and develops along the AHL timeline. To me, that makes more sense than anything else. I'm not a proponent of waiving or trading Sam Montembeault today. I do believe they're going to need Sam Montembeault. I'm very skittish on 2 rookie goaltenders working together to get this team over the line and maybe win a round in the playoffs. I'm skittish on that. I'll be happy to be proven wrong. But to me, more logically, what makes more sense is that if Montembeault can find some version of his former self, I think Jakub Dobeš is logically the guy in my mind, Marco, that if Fowler continues to play well again, I could see Dobeš being the guy that goes back to Laval.
I could see Dobeš being the one that gets traded.
Yeah, wow.
The reason I say this is, and I'm seeing a lot of Montembeault to the Oilers. Guys, look at their cap space. It's not happening.
Right.
So, the way with Dobeš is, I don't think he's getting sent down. Why would he? He's looked very good. For those that say that that there's no chance that Dobeš gets traded, Dobeš's last start at home had 3 goalie scouts in the stands. So let's not talk about things that are sure with that kind of information. It's very open. The Canadiens are very open to multiple possibilities. The only sure thing we know is that Jacob Fowler is not going to be traded at all. But after that, I think they're very open in terms of what they want to do. And when it comes to being okay, we're going to address this once and once only when it comes to Sam Montembeault. He is not being kept around this team because of where he was born. It has nothing to do with him being French Canadian. I want that kind of stuff off this show right away. It has nothing to do with being French Canadian. Unfortunately, guys, it is because he carried this team in net for the 3 years that he was here prior to this season. And after, 15, 16 bad starts, he's now like nothing. So there's this like ridiculous public drop off with the player. And like, I understand frustration with fans. You want to see, this is the best league in the world. You want to see your goalies perform. I get that. But a lot of the Montembeault bashing has been like ridiculously personal and or like confettious. I don't like seeing this. So we're gonna put this to bed. Montembeault is not being given the net over and over again.
You're getting very wrapped up in the comment section again, but whatever.
No, but like this specific point, because I've seen it
played
online.
a part of the Montreal Canadiens for the lifetime of a lot of different people. I'm not disagreeing with your sentiment. I don't believe that. I don't believe that he has a roster spot because of his last name. But politics around the Montreal Canadiens have been around for a long time. So I think that's where people come from. I think there's that baggage that's been around for a long time.
I don't think they have 7 French Canadian players on this team.
I understand
right
that. But my point being, it's been around the team for the lifetime of a lot of people. That's where it comes from. It's called baggage.
Fantastic. But you're dealing with Kent Hughes, not Mark Bergevin, not Bob Gainey, not Denis Savard. Like, it's not any of, or Serge Savard, sorry. You're not dealing with any of that. Like, this is a pure, at the beginning of the season, nobody would have had a problem having Montembeault as the number 1 goalie.
No, that was the plan. This
regardless,
was not the plan. This was
regardless of where he was from, right? So to me, when you look at the options in front of you, the fact that the Canadiens are trying to get Montembeault going has absolutely nothing to do with where he's from. It has everything to do with asset valuation. It has everything to do with, well, if he's not going to be in the long-term picture because you don't trust him, hope he gets his game back, and then you flip him and you trade him eventually to a team that needs the goaltending. And then you go into next season and you try to you go down the stretch with a Montembeault Fowler, or sorry, a Fowler Dobesh pairing, for goalies, and hope that you could pick up, an AHL veteran goaltender, for depth purposes within the same move. That's the only way I would see it happen, because right now for me, like, I understand a lot of the reasoning, like, why are they giving him so many opportunities? And the simple reason is, with goalies, you have no choice. Look around the league to the teams that you don't watch necessarily. Look at some of the other teams that are having goaltending issues or that have a hierarchy scenario going on right now. There's more than just the Montreal Canadiens. Look at what Edmonton did. Edmonton was so desperate to make a marginal move that they traded a 2nd-round pick and Brett Kulak to swap Seward Skinner and Tristan Jarry. Now Tristan Jarry is injured, though not a long-term injury. So they can't use his full LTIR, which means that Montembeault to the Oilers is not a thing. But with Montembeault, like, I just feel like, again, if he could be a good veteran backup for Jacob Fowler for that transition, then he's worth his weight in gold right there and then.
Yes.
Now the Canadiens have to help him find his game. Period.
Well, and he talked about that. He talked about how when he was working with Marciano in Laval, and I liked what he said. It's not like, you don't want to overcomplicate things. I think anybody that's ever played sports at whatever level, but you played it competitively because you cared about it, I think everybody always tries to tinker and everybody always tries to get better. Whether you're a Sam Montembeault in the National Hockey League or whether you're playing golf with your buddies and you take it somewhat seriously, tinkering, it's not an overhaul. It's not a tear down and build it back up again. So I think, in my opinion anyway, the way they handled Sam Montembeault in Laval and the way he expressed how he was handled in Laval was the right approach. It's like they're not reinventing the wheel. They're not teaching him how to, play goal again. They're finding little areas and trying to get him back into the right spot competitively. And more importantly, to me, it's a mental thing. It's the confidence of, can I do this again? Can I be? And you know what? I mean, whatever you think of Sam Montembeault, he did the job. He did the job, end of the day. And personally, I'd much rather build him back up again, whether it's in tandem with Fowler or tandem with Dobesh. I think you're going to need that experience. And the only way you get it is he's got to find his game again. I believe they need Sam Montembeault. Say what you want about the guy. They need Sam Montembeault, and they got to figure out. But it takes me back to where this conversation began with you is how much longer do they try to get him going again? That
so
to me, that's the money question I brought up 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, therein lies the real crux of it, because you can only try to get him going for so long before you have to make a call.
Yeah.
Like if we're still having this discussion by the Olympic break, we have a problem.
Oof.
Like that's
well, the
where
roster
that's where
freezes
it's going to be.
February 4th, right? I mean, that's a long time from now. Yeah.
Well, it's 5 weeks, right? If we're still having this, we're still having this conversation, you know, to me, when you look at his body of work, like everyone's looking at his save percentage, Montembeault, like a 900 goalie. Yeah. But he's at the top of the goals saved above expected because he played on probably one of the worst defensive cores in the modern era.
Yeah.
So to me,
that's 19 games, by the way. 5 weeks, it's 19 games.
Yeah. 19 games in which you'd probably get in what, 4 or 5 games?
All depends, right? It all depends how he does.
So the way that I see it is it's confidence. It's all psyche. Goalie, half of the rigors of being a goaltender is the psyche.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing you got to watch out for the most is psyche when it comes to being able to find your center, find your groove. That's why goalies are such a rare breed. I just think, like I said, and I'm going to let this go after this, but I think the Canadiens are going to continue this into maybe mid-January and then come to a decision.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if Montembeault did find his game, that Fowler was sent down temporarily and that the Canadiens would be continuing to accrue cap space based on the salary that they saved, so that they would be more flexible to encourage a trade that would include one of the other 2 goaltenders along with others to be able to make plays.
We'll see what happens. We know Jacob Fowler, if you're just joining us, Jacob Fowler has the net tonight, late this afternoon, I suppose, at 5 o'clock at Tampa Bay. It's game number 3 of a 7-game road trip. The Canadiens will play Tuesday, Thursday, and then Saturday, Sunday to wrap up the week. In the meantime, it was a lot of fun to see the ongoing discussion online around the top 10 prospect video on the channel. If you haven't missed it, head over to the main page under the video tab. You're going to see the latest, right? When we talked about the Canadiens ranking the Canadiens top 10 prospects, we talked about Bryce Pickford in an earlier video. Bryce Pickford, 4 points yesterday, 1 goal, 3 assists for the 19-year-old is absolutely tearing it up in the Western Hockey League. But Michael Hage, ranked number 1 on the Montreal Canadiens top 10 prospect ranking list. Go check out the rest of the video for the rest of the rankings and a breakdown for the reasons why they slotted Marco where they did. But it was interesting to see a lot of pundits were talking about they're hoping to see basically an air quote coming out party for Michael Hage. How would you classify how he's done? 2 games for Team Canada at the World Juniors. They're 2-0. Wild games against Czechia and Latvia, to which Michael Hage had his fingerprints all over both victories.
I mean, I thought Michael Hage was Team Canada's most consistent player in both games. You know, everything that I've been talking about, you basically saw in a nutshell in what was it, 122 minutes of hockey. Like it's exactly as advertised. Elite in transition, great hands, great speed. But my concerns remain the same. And I took a lot of heat for saying this because everyone's slotting him in the 2C. But I think he's going to be a fantastic player. A can't miss top 6 player.
What a shot too.
But yeah, exactly. The shooting, the passing, the hands, the transition, the improving board battles, the defensive awareness that I was seeing last game. Like he's just showing more and more maturity, and that's why they're playing him more and more and more. Like he's looked better than Michael Misa, and Misa is playing with a little bit of an injury. So let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
But you also have to factor in, and this is the one thing that always holds me back with him, the face-offs, man. It's just, he's been excellent in every aspect except that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what holds him back, honest to God, from being like a can't miss second line center, is because of the faceoffs. Everything else he does well. He's attacking the middle with regularity. He's playing up high. in the offensive zone to support his wingers. He's playing down low in the defensive zone to support his defensemen. He's active in the neutral zone. He's cutting off passes. He's boxing guys out in transition. Like, he's done everything that's asked of a center, and it ain't easy playing center for a Hunter. Let me tell you guys.
Yeah.
So I like the way he's been playing, but again, like, until he is a regular above 50% face-off guy, I just don't know how he's going to do that. But and this is where a big but, in this tournament at the same age, Nick Suzuki was playing on the wing. Wasn't even taking faceoffs. And now he's an above 50% faceoff guy. So faceoffs can be worked on and learned. It's not the end of the world, but it's one of the aspects of his game that when we're projecting him as a center, you just really have to pay attention to, and he's really got to continue to work hard on. But what I've seen, or I think what really has improved in his game, is just the 200-foot game. Yeah. That to me is what's going to allow him an easier transition at the pro level. And that, a big nod of the cap and a thank you to the Michigan Wolverines with Brandon Naurato and Max Pacioretty at Michigan that have been really harping on that, from the very beginning of the season.
To me, to the point about, face-offs and, listen, I mean, you can't sugarcoat it. It's been terrible. But outside of that, I mean, to me, it's all about context and expectation, right? When we talk about Michael Hage and, like, at this point, what I look for when I watch a Canadiens prospect like Michael Hage and the expectation, right? It's like no one ever classified or categorized him as a generational talent, ready to come in the NHL and take the league over by storm. But what you look for a promising talent, in my opinion anyway, is what are his hockey instincts? Is he positionally smart? Does he make good reads in the offensive zone? And to me, it's been an overwhelming yes after 2 games. His speed is there. Obviously, we just talked about his shot, how he gels with his line mates. And think about Michael Hage versus think about the scrutiny Gavin McKenna is under. He picked up a couple assists, I know, in the win, right? But, like, you went into this tournament, if you don't live and die with the NCAA or the CHL, it's like, what do you know about Gavin McKenna? It's you watch the TSN guys and they tell you, he's a phenom and so on and so forth. It's been underwhelming. But when you watch Michael Hage, it's the small things about his game that make me believe that he's got a bright future, but he's not perfect. And there are things in his game that he's going to have to work on as he graduates to higher levels of hockey eventually.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, it really, the evolution of his game, like, we already knew about the vision, the passing, the one-on-ones, the transition game. We already knew about all that. It's the layers that he's adding. And I feel like it's really important to point out, because this is the reason why I've been kind of like slowing everybody's roll on this, trying to put him in a top 9 center slot right off the bat with the Montreal Canadiens. Right. I think that there's a lot that's improved. He looks fantastic. Could he play on the Canadiens at the end of the season? Absolutely. If he signs his entry-level contract, you bet your bottom dollar he would get games, and that will come either in late March or early April. So I'm not worried about that. What I really liked about Michael Hage, for example, is that he's really seizing the opportunity. This is a guy that didn't think he would ever get to represent his country, because there was a stigma against the NCAA up until last year's ruling, opening up the floodgates of CHL players being able to play in the NCAA. Well, now that he's there, he's making the most of it. And again, like, you have very high picks in this on this team. Mm-hmm. A lot of them were picked this summer. You look at Brady Martin. Some of them are only going to get picked next summer. You look at Gavin McKenna. You look at Keaton Vierhoff, who I think is going to get a game in. Carroll is going to get a game, or has been getting games. Even a guy that hasn't been drafted, Ethan McKenzie, who's been fantastic. You have guys that, have experience, and then you have guys like Michael Hage who kind of pull it all together. And I think that's the key here, is that he's exactly your prototypical second line center on a tournament like this, and he's giving them higher value. I find it intriguing that it's Michael Hage playing at center and not Brady Martin, who was a 5th overall pick, in the 2025 draft for the Nashville Predators. I enjoy the fact that it's Michael Hage, and I think the reason for that is because Team Canada's identity is being able to play with speed up the middle.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what a guy like Michael Hage brings, and he's bringing it, in waves.
Canada's not back into they'll play their traditional New Year's Eve game, not against the Americans, of course. They've got Atos Koivu and Team Finland coming up on a Wednesday night. That's an 8:30 p.m. game. The rest of the schedule is pretty light, to be honest with you. When we look at Canada and Denmark, they're going to play tomorrow at 8:30. And as I mentioned, I mean, kind of light kind of night, but I don't know. I thought maybe Canada was going to be a little bit, it's only 2 games, prelim games. I thought they were going to be a little bit more dominant personally. And I listen, I mean, the whole, the sportsmanship angle to me was interesting with Porter Martone, and then the pat on the back after the goal and everything else. But I guess maybe credit to Latvia for how they knew they couldn't go north-south with Canada, else they get blown out again. So, I mean, they had a good game plan, but I was just, I guess, based on our conversation about how stacked Team Canada's top 6 is, I think I was looking for a little bit more dynamic play in the first 2 games.
Yeah, I would definitely say, let's start off with this.
Yeah.
Remember the name Alberts Smits?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Remember the name.
Yeah.
That is a defenseman that's currently playing in the Finnish Liga, Latvian. I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing him in consideration for the top 5, let alone the top 10 for this upcoming draft. He is
confident guy.
He's just turning it around. Like he plays such a strong defensive game that he was just really suffocating the Michael Misa line. And you talk Porter Martone is someone you need to see more of. TJ Ginla, I've liked. He's been like the little engine that could on his line. Yeah. Michael Misa, I give him a pass because I personally think he's still playing through an injury. So we'll give him that. Where I really point the finger is on the 3rd and 4th lines. That's where other than Cole Reshny, who scored a fantastic goal on the power play, was that a power play? Was that a penalty? Yeah. We can definitely argue it.
My gosh,
that was a gorgeous goal.
Yeah.
And then after that, the offense is basically come from the back end in Parek. So what's the problem here? Well, guys like Jet Luchenko, guys like Cole Baudouin, not doing much. And it's ironic to me that a guy like Caleb Desnoyers, who started as the 13th forward, is now can't miss on the 3rd line. And I venture to think, the Team Canada is wondering, like, do we give this guy more minutes?
Right.
Like, do they split up the top line? Well, there you go. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Do they split up the top line and put Desnoyers on the top line? Because this is my thing with Caleb Desnoyers, and I know we're veering away from Canadians talk, but I just want to state this. Caleb Desnoyers, in every role that Team Canada has ever given, we go back to the U18s, the U17s, he's always risen above and has always, been able to, get the desired result for his coaches. And this goes back, years, even last year in the playoffs. He was playing in the QMJHL playoffs with 2 broken wrists, and they went very deep. So when it comes to the World Junior Championships in Canada, I'll say this: if they play the way they played against Latvia for the rest of this tournament, they're not getting past the quarterfinals
again. Yeah.
So they're going to need some of their older guys, like, for example, Michael Hage right now, 2nd line center, producing well. Jet Luchenko is picked like 8 picks ahead of him, or 7 picks ahead of him at like 13 or 14. I haven't seen anything from Jet Luchenko. And I know that he's more your prototypical future 3rd line center in the NHL. But buddy, you've played NHL games. Like, there has to be a level where you bring that experience, just like Zane Parek is bringing that experience, or Harrison Brunick is bringing that experience. Well, they need a little bit more from Jet Luchenko, in my honest opinion, and their bottom 6 in general.
By the way, final thing, Zane Parek, great shot. Great shot. I mean, this guy, the quick release with weight behind it. Very nice.
His offensive ability is fantastic.
Yeah.
His defensive ability and his board battling, that's where I'm still on the fence.
All eyes on all things NHL. And listen, I mean, we haven't been around in a few days. So yeah, no apologies for not talking Montreal Canadiens hockey for the last 5 to 10 minutes there, as moving around Montreal Canadian prospects to the Canadiens' top prospect, according to Marco D'Amico in Michael Hage, and how he's performing after 2 games. Team Canada back in action when they play Denmark coming up on Monday night. In the meantime, it's game day for the Montreal Canadiens, 5 o'clock in Tampa Bay. It's game 3 of a 7-game road trip. It started with a shootout loss in Pittsburgh, followed up with a 6-2 beatdown of the Boston Bruins. I don't know, like you mentioned earlier, trap game, right? Like Tampa Bay played a hard-fought game against the Florida Panthers in which they came out on top. In contrast, the Ottawa Senators got tired in the third period, according to their coach Travis Green yesterday, and lost by 2 on a John Tavares empty netter to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And by the way, watch out. Here come the Buffalo Sabres. They're just 2 points back. They've won 8 in a row. Interesting stuff. But in the meantime, I wonder how you think this layoff is going to affect the Canadiens in Tampa. I know it's not going to affect Lane Hudson and Demidov because they're out there playing shinny with the kids at neighborhood parks. That was awesome. Great job mixing it up in the community. That's the stuff that moves the needle. But how are you feeling about the layoff and how it affects the Canadiens or doesn't affect the Canadiens at 5 o'clock today?
Look, I mean, I think they're gonna have to learn. They learned their lesson the last time where they were getting Tampa on a back-to-back and got absolutely blown up. Right? I think that when you watch a player like him, like Cooch, for example, give one heck of a bounce-back performance. When you see guys like Darren Radish step up in the injury to Victor Hedman, you know, like that's the guys you gotta watch out for. And I think, you know, when Tampa is at their best, they're a difficult team to beat. I don't necessarily think they're at their best right now. Like they use the Canadiens as a bounce back to go on a little bit of a run, and now have slowly been, you know, it was more the sense that the team didn't play tight enough, right? That they let the game get away from them very quickly, and I think that's the mindset. If they play as tightly as they played against Boston, if they played as tightly, well, you know what? I'll rephrase that. If they play as tightly as they did against Boston in the second half of the game, if they play as tightly as they did against Pittsburgh in Montreal, then they have a serious chance to win. And I would definitely agree with that. What I would definitely go on to say is be very, very careful about them playing a backup against Montreal. That's the only thing I got to say. And this isn't even the backup. This is like the third string goalie because sometimes they maneuver, but I'm pretty sure this is their current backup. I'll double check that. With Tampa Bay, I think the trap here and where the Canadiens can beat them, and I think this is where Phil Deneau is going to have to like play his best game of the year, is you're really going to have to take Kucherov out of it completely. If you're able to take that top line out of it completely, they tend to have difficulty being able to catch up. We saw it a little bit last night. And so that's my game plan. And I know that the Canadiens love matching up the top line, like the Suzuki line against other teams' top lines. But now, like the reason why Deneau was acquired was exactly for this role. Let's see what he can do.
And I would imagine too, like to your point, right? Vasilevsky has been in goal for 5 straight for the Lightning, and was in goal yesterday for them. So the guy who backstopped them to that 6-1 win is it Johansson.
Johansson.
I would imagine you're probably going to see him at 5 o'clock tonight. So it should be a good one. You know, as we saw last year, and we see how this team has navigated through the injuries and stuff. I think, you know, obviously the break has come at the right time. The aftermath of the Jake Evans injury, Phil Deneau, I think mentally Marco is in a very, very good place. And I just can't help but laugh. I know we're not going to talk about it, but I can't help but laugh. It seems that every day there's more information that comes out of Los Angeles about just how bad that relationship was. It's amazing to me. Every day there's something else, you know, but I digress. But the, you know, injuries are never good. But as we pointed out already, the acquisition of Phil Deneau came at an absolutely perfect time. There's no doubt about that. And we'll see what happens. You know, I haven't heard anything on Alex Texier.
He's playing.
Perfect. So
he was on a regular line rush during practice yesterday with Phil Deneau and Josh Anderson.
Yeah, so
he's very likely playing because Owen Beck was subbing in with Sammy Blais on the fourth line.
Yeah. And it's amazing too, right? I mean, kudos to Ken Hughes. I mean, picking up these air quote cast off guys and Sammy Blais, they've had immediate impacts coming up. How's Owen Beck looking in your eye since the recall and how he's being used and kind of playing down the middle and looking like an everyday NHL player, question mark?
Yeah. Look, I think Owen Beck is showing that he can play in the NHL. He's got really good stats when it comes to faceoffs. He scored his first goal in the NHL 3 times. I think that's a record.
Yeah.
You know, and the way that you watch him play, you know, you see the hockey IQ, you see the speed in which he's able to process, you see how involved he is on the forecheck, and he's got a really good wrister, man. It's just a question of just being able to continue to play that aggressive game. So to me, I like him, but could he go back to Laval when Kirby Dach comes back? I believe that's exactly where he's going.
Yeah.
And that's not a problem. It's not the end of the world. No one's ever been hurt by over simmering in the AHL. And honestly, I don't think that this is the year where he makes the team full time, especially when everybody starts coming back from injury. If and when, of course.
Yeah, of course.
I think with Owen Beck, you got to be encouraged by what you see if you're the Canadiens brass in terms of what is happening. You've seen as well a growth in his game, a little bit of more urgency in his game. So what does that do for the Montreal Canadiens? Well, it offers them 2 possibilities. You can go into next summer knowing that you probably have a plug and play 4th line player that you could put with or instead of, depending on how the Canadiens want to go about it, Jake Evans on the 4th line, or Owen Beck becomes a trade piece because you do have Jake Evans signed for 3 years. You do have Florian Jacki, who's playing center right now and looked pretty good yesterday in the 3rd period for the Laval Rocket. Or, you know, and then obviously Oliver Kapanen and Michael Hage potentially coming into the picture at the end of the season. You know, there's going to, There's going to be a lot of people in this for 4 or 5 or 6 spots. Yes, some of them can be moved to the wing, but then that poses other questions with, well, then do the Canadiens keep Alex Texier? What ends up happening with Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher? Is Sammy Blais re-signed? Like there's a whole thing, but what it gives the Canadiens is options. And I think that's the best thing that they could have. The more options you have, the more options you can make a move, the more options that you can go about, you know, maybe dealing from a position of strength to, again, fill a need organizationally, be it a scoring winger or, again, you know, a top 6 center.
And I know we've seen, obviously, I mean, the Quinn Hughes was a seismic transaction. Referenced earlier, the Stuart Skinner, Tristan Jarry, Brett Kulak deal with Edmonton and Pittsburgh moving pieces on the chessboard. The Montreal Canadiens for a 2nd rounder get Phil Deneau out of Los Angeles. But what we learned was that, yes, Jacob Fowler starts today. Sam Montembeault's back with the Canadiens. Maybe 2 weeks ago, you and I were talking about the chances at the time looked pretty good that Kirby Dach was going to play before the Christmas break. Well, that obviously hasn't happened, and it looks like things have gotten maybe worse because he's not even with the team in Florida, right? So the timeline for Kirby Dach remains a mystery. It's maybe you could call it even a setback at this point. But as you talk about all these players from Blais to Texier, Owen Beck, Adam Engstrom, how he's looked since being called up and everything else, you get the feeling that between now and, we referenced this earlier, the next roster freeze is February 4th for the Olympic break. Do you get the sense that the Canadiens are going to be one of the busier teams trying to either make a trade with all the assets that are getting looks at the NHL in terms of maybe adding more depth, more age, more experience to this roster moving forward here?
Yeah, I see in the comments as well, like what happened to not blocking prospects from making the NHL. I think what happened is the Canadiens are the youngest team in the NHL.
Yeah,
that's kind of it. And the reason they acquired Phil Deneau was because they lacked experience, especially at forward, in their lineup. So you can't just have kids This ain't NHL 26. You can't have everybody under the age of 25 peaking at the same time. You need some experience. You need some guys that are going to be able to show them how to play. They're going to be able to weather the storm when there's pressure, and that you're going to be able to throw out at the end of the game to help kind of close things out. So that's where Phil Deneau's acquisition comes in, and that's why Owen Beck, who is waiver exempt, may be sent down. There's nothing saying that he's blocked from playing at the NHL level long term. It's just he's blocked right now with the way that things are played out. The same applies to a guy like Adam Engstrom, who, has, 4 or 5 defensemen ahead of him. So that's really where it is right now when it comes to him. And then you also have to factor in long term. The Canadiens have a long term plan, right? Michael Hage, Alexander Zhuravsky. I see a lot of questions about Zhuravsky. Don't expect him this spring a la Demidov, because unlike Demidov, he still has an extra year on his contract. And Ufa very much likes their cheap labor right now in the KHL.
So much misinformation around this kid, eh? So much misinformation from air quote insiders about his pending arrival in Montreal.
Yeah, he'd need Ufa to release him. The Canadiens can't buy him. This isn't soccer. There's a CBA that prohibits that. Why did Skala Demidov go? Optics. They didn't want to look like the team that held back one player and let Grziak and why am I blanking on the other one's name? The defenseman for Carolina. Oh my God, this is going to bother me.
Oh boy,
this is going to bother me a lot, guys. Sorry, we're taking a break from your regularly scheduled programming to bring you.
What's the mystery
Nikishin,
name?
Alexander Nikishin. There it is.
This guy got it.
They didn't want to let Nikishin go and Grziak go and not let Demidov go. That would have been a really bad look and a pure politics move that would have been really bad. And at the time, Rottenberg was trying to save his job with Ska. Unfortunately, that did not work out.
Right.
So with Zhuravsky, yes, he's playing well. He's being played much more than Demidov was being played in Ska and given, ample opportunity to produce offensively. But there's still work to be done.
Yeah.
He needs to get stronger. He needs to get faster. His defensive game needs a significant leg up. Like if Demidov was a work in progress when he came over to the NHL, Zhuravsky needs a little bit more time. And I think that, at the end of the 2027 season, in April 2027, that's when he could potentially make the jump. So the Canadiens are planning for this. That's why they're thinking about Owen Beck long term. They think of Zhuravsky, Michael Hage, David Reinbacher, who had 2 assists yesterday and had a pretty solid third period in overtime, in my opinion, but still has things to work out in terms of his gap control and defensive game. But it's been getting better and better now that he's been healthy and playing a significant amount of games. So they have a vision for all these players, and you can't just siphon them all onto your team right away. You need to stagger their arrival so that it's not too many kids at once. Because right now the Canadiens are playing, I believe when Engstrom is in, I think they're playing with 5 rookies. They reached a point this season where they were playing with 6.
Yeah. Anywhere
that's
between
insane.
4 and 6 on a daily basis.
That's insane. That's insane. And the team is a playoff team. Like, that's crazy. So you have to take that into consideration when you think about the needs of this team and where the roster construction strategy is going. And so after a 5-minute rant, to answer Shaun's question, yes, I do believe that the Montreal Canadiens are going to be a very active team when we get into the February, March area. Like right before the trade freeze, I think you're going to see like almost like the All-Star game. The last couple of seasons, we saw a couple of trades right before. You're going to see a couple of trades right before that. And then I do believe that at the point we get to March, people will have a general idea of what their seasons are going to look like. There's going to be a little bit less parity. And that is where we could see the sellers market open up and buyers be a little bit more aggressive.
Well, I'll be fascinated to see, because I do think the Canadiens aren't done. There's too much gossip around this team about what they're looking for. And regardless of how Marco or I or you feel about Oliver Kapanen and his development, the fact that the Canadiens and the talk around this team still looking for the 2C isn't going away, I still believe, and I wouldn't be surprised about this, that, here we are talking with the Canadiens sitting 3rd in their division, right? We're nearing the halfway point of the NHL season, and a congested year it is, that if the Canadiens are still, like, we're talking about a top 3 team in the Atlantic, I mean, I can see them being riskier than maybe they originally sought out to be in order to maybe get someone to plug the 2C hole, to get a little bit more experience down the stretch to, I mean, I guess, shore up and give the vote of confidence to this team that we're not going to, air quote, waste what you guys have accomplished. But I think that environment, that world exists if they're top 3 as we get deeper into, just before the Olympic break or coming out of the Olympic break.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things to factor in. Do I think they're going to be aggressive on the trade market? Yes. Are they going to be risky? No. They're going to wait for the exact perfect moment. Look at the Phil Deneau trade. They were looking for that kind of player all season.
Yeah.
Right. And then he became available. They pounced on it. And then they got LA. I'm not gonna rehash the story, but they got LA and they backed LA into a corner because they had set up an internal deadline to trade Deneau. They desperately wanted a roster player in return. The Canadiens kept pushing them towards a draft pick. And in the end, at the 11th hour, quite literally at the 11th hour, the Kings acquiesced and they agreed to the trade. Now, when it comes to what they have to do next year or in the year after, like there's time to plug that hole of 2C and get a legitimate 2C if they want to, just like they could see how things go with Oliver Kapanen, or they could see what happens with Michael Hage at the end of the season, because Michael Hage, the way he's playing, is more than likely going to sign his entry-level contract. Like in interviews, it's normal that he plays it down. Every single prospect signed out of the NCAA that I've covered has always been this way. Lane Hudson was non-committal at this time 3 years ago. I think back to Cole Caulfield was non-committal at this time, when he was going through the process and it was his second NCAA season. Like they're always non-committal. But Michael Hage, at the moment that he left the NCAA to join Team Canada, was tied for the lead in scoring. If they go all the way, or if they go deep into the playoffs, it's very likely that he signs his entry-level contract in late March or early April and plays for the Montreal Canadiens, the same way that Lane Hudson played 2 games at the end of the season for the Montreal Canadiens, the same way that Sean Farrell did. Because if you sign your entry-level contract out of the NCAA, you can't go to Laval. You have to play with Montreal. The only exception to that rule is if you do what Jacob Fowler did last summer and sign a professional tryout to go to Laval and only sign your entry-level contract for the next season. But it's extremely rare for first-round pick forwards of this hype to accept that kind of secondary deal. They will go for the entry-level deal. And it helps the Montreal Canadiens because if they do burn the first year of his contract immediately, Michael Hage becomes exempt from offer sheets when his contract ends. So there is a benefit to it.
Yeah, I love that. By the way, you touch on Lane Hudson and when he came up to play those 2 games against the Red Wings there and looked so good immediately. Man, that was worrisome there for a second with USA's game against Switzerland to take it back to the World Juniors. His brother Cole Hudson takes that puck to the back of the net area, back of the neck, in the head. You never want to see a player get stretchered off the ice. But the good news is he was released from the hospital, has rejoined his team at this World Juniors. But boy, oh boy, I'm not going to lie, man. I immediately thought of Lane. I mean, what's going through his head? As he prepares for an NHL game while his brother's being stretchered off the ice at a high-level hockey game. But the good news there that he seems to be okay. I don't know if he's going to play more hockey for Team USA, but at least he's back with his team. That's good news as Canada gets back to action tomorrow against Denmark, right? But it's Habs and Lightning tonight at 5:00. Be honest. I mean, with the goalie struggles, the age, the fact that this team is 3-1 in their last 4, Marco, and have scored 17 goals in their last 4 games. How this team has navigated this season leaves me, anyway, a lot of reason to be optimistic about the direction that they're taking and where they're going. I know teams have faced adversity, but the Canadiens have faced adversity in a very layered way and continue to look very, very good. I mean, in all honesty, man, I'm very impressed. I didn't think they were going to be this competitive after 37 games.
I think one of the things to keep into consideration, I'm surprised that they're where they are right now, given how young this team is, given how inconsistent the goaltending has been, and given how many injuries they've had. You line that all up, and there was a recipe for them being a bottom 5 team in the NHL.
Yeah,
with
agreed.
Those things happening, not at the beginning of the season when they're healthy and and their goaltending was at least league average.
Bro, just the goalie storyline alone would have made me believe that. Forget about the injuries, right?
Right, exactly. So if they would have had half decent goaltending throughout the season, they'd be running away with the Atlantic right now. I think it's fair to say. So with that being said, yeah, I think all things considered, this is fantastic. Nick Suzuki is trending for a 90-point season. Cole Caulfield is on a point per game heater. Ivan Demidov is having a fantastic rookie season so far, despite inconsistent utilization. Lane Hudson looks like he's reaching number one defenseman level, before our very eyes. Like, there's a lot of progress happening. There's a lot of it. Oliver Kapanen progressing into a very valuable center for the Canadiens. Juraj Slafkovsky becoming Slavzilla, Habs Digest, and everything else in the middle. A guy like Jacob Fowler, showing what he can do. I think all in all, there's a very positive first half of the season for the Canadiens, given everything that's happening. And what makes me kind of curious is when this team now is at full capacity, when Caden Gooley comes back, when eventually Alex Newhook comes back, I'm going to go one level beyond. If they can solidify their goaltending, if they could figure it out amongst the three, that they get two that are running and above at or just slightly above league average, not only do I think they can make the playoffs, I think they can win a round.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Chris,
that's the way I see it.
Chris and NDG, with Gooley coming back, Jack-Eye playing well, and with Engstrom knocking, time to look at Struble and Alex Carrier perhaps in the trade window. Careful what you wish for about Alex Carrier. In my opinion, anyway. I wouldn't be so fast to look at maybe moving him personally, but your thoughts on Chris's question.
I know he's become a little bit of a whipping boy, but almost like Mike Matheson last year, I feel like he's not playing in the prime, in the best situation for a player of his talents. And I think that's something to keep in mind, right? I think Alex Carey is being asked to play like a number 3 or a number 4 defenseman on certain nights, when really he's more of a 5 or 6. And the fact that he's a right shot on a team that currently lacks right shots on the roster, they have, what is it, 6, 7? No, 6 left shot defensemen right now. With Gooley on IR, on LTIR.
I mean, the guy sometimes he can't skate with his partners. These guys, you put him with Lane Hudson. I mean, these guys are so fast.
Yeah, but you see, I didn't mind the Lane Hudson Alex Carrier pairing because Lane Hudson was playing on his strong side on the left, and he looked so dynamic on his strong side, especially in transition. So there's a trade-off. And with that trade-off, I'm okay with it for now. But when Caden Gooley comes back, everybody in their right chair. And so Adam Engstrom, because of his waiver exemption, when Caden Gooley comes back, unless there's a trade, which really has a lot to do with who's willing who's interested in a Struble or a Jack-Eye or an Engstrom, whoever the Canadiens decide. It's all as who's your trade partner and what could happen. I think the Canadiens will buy themselves time, send Engstrom back down to Laval, and then wait to see how the market plays out. If it plays out where they can include a young defenseman in a package for an area of need.
You want to go backwards to the 2024?
This is a very easy answer. Very easy.
That was the Demidov Michael Hage draft year, right? The question is, why didn't the Canadiens take Cole Hudson back when?
2 reasons. Number 1, they didn't have a second round pick. They traded it to they traded their own second round pick in 2024. I won't bring up the trade, but they traded it to the Colorado Avalanche in the previous trade. They had Colorado's second round pick. I apologize. They traded their 2024 second round pick in a prior trade, so they didn't have their own. And then they traded Colorado's second. The 2024, their 2024 pick, if I'm not mistaken, and people are going to get really pissed off here.
Yeah, what was it?
Pretty sure it went to Arizona. I'm pretty sure it was in the Christian Dvorak trade.
Oh, wow. Okay. Huh.
I'll double check.
Not great.
So that was one. And then the Canadiens used the late second that they had. I think it was 57th, along with the 7th round pick to move from 26th overall to 21st overall in order to get in position to draft either Michael Hage or Cole Yzerman. And they got the player that they wanted first on their list, which was Michael Hage. So I'm kind of on that fence. Number 2, though, and I think this is the most important thing, I don't think you can have both of them on your team and hope, like, you need a mix of players. It's great to have good players, but I don't know that you could have Cole and Lane on the same team playing on the left side. They play a very similar game, with some differences, yes, but they play a very similar game. And I just don't know that Cole Hudson will be as valuable to a team if he's not playing on the first wave of the power play or the second. And so I think that's where you have to go and get players that are different. And with the Montreal Canadiens using that second round pick to trade up to get either an elite goal scorer or a bona fide top 6 forward, potentially top 6 center in Michael Hage, I think everybody, I don't think anybody's complaining. What's worse is how Washington got Cole Hudson, because they didn't own that pick either. They traded Beck Malestein to the Buffalo Sabres for that second round pick, I believe just before the draft, just before the second round, and then used it to draft Cole Hudson. That is crazy.
43rd overall. Do you guys think Bryce Pickford will make for a great duo with Lane Hudson? He's fast, physical, playmaking ability, and elite shooting abilities. Matches perfectly with Hudson, in my opinion. The question from Zolak.
I don't know that I would say that. I don't know that I would say that Pickford is necessarily fast.
Right.
Like, he's got good agility. He's a pretty good skater, but like, he's fast in the dub. In the WHL, like, he looks fast in the dub. Elite shooting abilities guaranteed. Yes, I don't think you want two offensive defensemen playing on the same pair. I think if you're going to be playing a Lane Hudson, you want a right shot defenseman that could hold it down, and you play Pickford probably, and the way that he's performing, probably on a third pair with a more defensive, physical oriented player on the left side, and then you have 3 really good pairings. But again, like, that's perspective. That's so down the line. My 2 cents is I think David Reinbacher is tailor-made to play with Lane Hudson. Tailor-made. And in the meantime, I think Caden Gooley holds that spot for now. But I think, and even Noah Dobson, I really like the Lane Hudson Noah Dobson pair. So there are so many options, and I think that Pickford, yes, he provides the shooting ability that Lane Hudson doesn't have, but then you have like 2 offensively minded defensemen. Yes, Lane Hudson has improved considerably in the defensive zone, but I just feel like you would leave yourself kind of exposed playing those 2 players together. And I don't think that Bryce Pickford is in the NHL for at least another 2 years. At least. His first NHL game, I don't think is next year, nor do I think it's the year after.
Member of the show, living up to the nickname Hot Take Hockey, Caden Gooley and Michael Hage for Robert Thomas with the Marco D'Amico eyeball emoji. I wonder if St. Louis would do this deal. I would do the deal, but I wonder if St. Louis would.
You would do the deal?
I would do the deal.
Oh man, that's tough. That's really tough.
You solve your 2C problem right away. You don't got to worry about the what ifs. I think Michael Hage is going to be a fine pro, but will he be a number 2 center every day at the NHL level? I mean, it's not a slam dunk. Yes.
Yeah.
What makes you pause? Walk me through what you're thinking. What gives you pause? What do you think? What's the angles you think about there?
I think the Montreal Canadiens greatly miss Caden Gooley.
Yeah.
They greatly miss Caden Gooley. And if Michael Hage becomes the top 6 center, because there is risk if he's a winger, if he's a center. Yeah. But if he does become the top 6 center, I think that St. Louis runs away with this deal. Gooley makes me pause for sure. Gooley, they wanted Gooley for Jordan Kyrou in the summer, did the St. Louis Blues, and the Canadiens didn't do it.
Yeah,
Robert Thomas changes the game for me a little bit.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes me kind of unsure is with Caden Gooley's injury history, and now you have Adam Engstrom coming up. Like, I could see it, but then the Canadiens will have a need for that physical rush defenseman that is able to play in all situations and shut down the opposition and play big. And I think Robert Thomas is too much like Nick Suzuki as a player, which isn't a problem, to be honest with you. But I just feel like what the Canadiens need is a center with a little bit more oomph, a little bit more physicality.
I feel you. I feel that.
So I'm like, this is a really good trade proposal.
It is
really good.
That's why I put it up.
It's really good because it's the kind of trade proposal that you would need to even get the Blues to consider.
Right.
That being said, I would be very, very careful. So, I think, you know, in a vacuum, because Robert Thomas is signed for so long, because we have seen other younger defensemen like an Engstrom show that they're eventually going to get there, I could be convinced if the read is that Michael Hage does not become a center in the NHL.
Right.
If that's your read, if you don't believe he's going to be a center, I would do that trade. But if you believe he's going to be a center, no way, Jose.
Let's move to goaltenders from Rod Langway. If Montembeault doesn't figure it out by the Olympics, would you just bring in Marc-Andre Fleury as a veteran mentor / insurance policy? Is that a crazy suggestion or idea?
It's not a crazy suggestion, but there's no way Marc-Andre Fleury comes back to play on a team where he's going to be perceived as some sort of savior. He's going to go to a contender that's looking to get some goaltending depth if he comes out of retirement. I don't think, because the other thing to keep in consideration is this. You sign him, he takes up a roster spot, right? Okay, cool. Who are you sending down? You're sending both Daubach and Fowler down?
Exactly.
You're going to waive Montembeault so that you can bring in Marc-Andre Fleury, who was a
that's
backup
why he says
himself?
if Monty doesn't figure it out. Like, I would think the suggestion is he's gone.
Again, it's just, this isn't football. You can't just cut a guy. You can't. You have to keep the contract in mind. So if you waive him, great, waive him. But at that point of the season, you don't know with goalie injuries. He may get plucked, which I think some fans would appreciate. I personally would not, because then you would be exposing two young rookie goalies, just like the Canadiens did in 07-08 with Halak and Price. And that was a cluster F for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm just very unsure. So I personally think that if Marc-Andre Fleury comes out of retirement, it's for a surefire contender, not a young team that's looking to, win a round.
Yeah, I think that's well put. From Dr. J, we talk about Zach Bolduc, Alex Texier. Dr. J says, what do you think about putting Josh Anderson next to Caulfield and Suzuki?
Yeah, I think we've been down that road and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you're going to put Anderson on the first line, just put Slafkovsky back.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather just keep Bolduc there, and I like Slafkovsky on his line with what he's cooking up there with Kapanen and Ivan Demidov. I'm excited to see Demidov off the break. And by the way, just as a quick aside, as someone that lived, breathed, and died hockey when I was a little kid, and I'm going to tell you how crazy I am. When I would play hockey outdoors every single day, and then I go play my league games, right? When I was playing outside, I would think I would do all these skating drills. I was a defenseman and I'd do crossovers on both sides. And I would pretend in my head that work hard, skate really hard, because maybe somebody driving by the park is a scout and will see you. That's how delusional I was, But Marco, I would have lost my mind if I was playing at Parc Patin, Ville-Saint-Laurent, and Montreal Canadiens players rolled up to the rink with their skates and stick in hand. Awesome. I loved. It spoke to me as a kid, as a diehard hockey player, to see Demidov and Lane Hudson out there. Alex Carrier, I should mention him. He was out there as well, playing some outdoor hockey with the kids. That would have absolutely made my day to see that, Marco.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about how the Canadiens, the young core has kind of ingrained itself. I always felt like back in the day, or at least during the Bergevin era, I felt like players were inaccessible in this market. Whereas now, like, they're out and about. Like Demidov spent the whole summer here, just getting acclimated, taking bike rides down the Lachine Canal, stuff like that. And I think that, it's great for the culture. It's great for the team. It's great for the players to be close to their fans and vice versa. It makes them look like they are a legitimately, local oriented team. And I love it. And I think that with, the practice facilities being closed, it was a great opportunity for them to just, get the ice, because good Lord, keeping those two guys away from the ice is a definite challenge. You literally need to kidnap them.
I laughed when I saw Hudson. Of course, Hudson's out there.
Yeah, of course. But I think that it's great for them. And I think it'll further speak to the relationship that the fans have with the team as this team continues to get better and better, because There's no team you would rather root for than a relatable team.
Exactly. Well
And
said.
obviously, you're going to want to root for a championship team. But
Yeah.
what makes them go over the top? A
Yeah.
relatable championship caliber team.
Yeah, agreed. One more. Let's go to Zolak again. The Canadiens are listed at currently, let's round up, 61% to make the playoffs, according to Money Puck.
They were at
yeah,
1% last year this time.
that's
So
wild. Wild.
I take that Money Puck,
Yeah.
like percentage,
Yeah.
shrivel it up, and
Yeah.
throw it right at the garbage.
I mean,
Because
I mean,
there
you
is
have
so
a
much
bad week.
parity.
Exactly.
There's so much parity that you have a bad 10-day stretch, and that goes from 60% to 20%.
Yes. Dude, it's
That's why
extreme
I don't.
parity.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. That's why the famous statistic of you have to be in the playoff picture by Thanksgiving for the last 2 seasons does not apply.
Does not apply. No, but and that's why I asked the question I asked earlier. Yes, I do agree. I think this team has shown you, with the layered amount of adversity they've dealt with and have navigated through. They're third in their division, which again, have a bad week, check back in on the show, and we're talking about a team on the outside looking in of a wild card, right? But that's why I feel that if the Canadiens can maintain this pace and be a top 3 team as we get closer to the Olympic break, and then eventually the March NHL trade deadline, I feel like Ken Hughes is going to reward this team by maybe doing something today he wouldn't necessarily agree with. So, like, I'll say hypothetically speaking, by that I mean Ryan O'Reilly is an example, right? That they don't want to pay that asking price. I mean, who wants to pay that asking price? And right now, O'Reilly,
he'd be gone.
Exactly. But I guess the point I'm making is that if they're third in the division around that time, around trade deadline time, I could see them maybe taking that risk and paying a more expensive price for a veteran player that they think can get them to a better spot when games really matter, and that's the first and maybe another round of the playoffs. But we'll see.
I don't see them doing that unless it's a player that fits in long term. I don't see them making the rash.
They're not in the rental category today, this year, no matter what. They're not in the rental market.
And I think Ryan O'Reilly's used to this team is a little bit more downplayed now because of the acquisition of Phil Deneau.
Yeah.
I think they'd be looking like, again, it would, like we've talked about this before. I think it would have to be like a perfect situation for them to really go ham, right? They're waiting to see who the best center available is going to be come trade deadline. And I think they're going to go ham on that player if that player makes sense. If the only top centers are Nazem Kadri and Ryan O'Reilly, I think they take pause just to see what the price point is and what the acquisition cost would look like. Are the Canadiens really in the position to sacrifice a good prospect and a first round pick?
Oof.
And in Kadri's case, plus to go and get one of these guys?
Yeah.
My 2 cents, no.
Oof.
Like, I just don't think they're there yet. It's fun for fans, right? Because you're like, they're still in it. They're in the playoffs. You want them to go far. I understand that. But would you rather they spend a first and a prospect on a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, or if God forbid Robert Thomas becomes available in the summer, and that first and a prospect is 2/3 of the deal to get a Robert Thomas to Montreal? Are you going to be face palming yourself when you see that trade happen and you gave up those assets for a 35-year-old? That's not necessarily going to give you the kind of offense that you need, moving down. And then, you leave yourself kind of exposed, because then it really, all the pressure is on Michael Hayes to develop as a 2C, or Oliver Kapanen to blow by expectations and be, a 2C. So, like, putting a lot of pressure on your kids, which I don't necessarily think is the best outcome.
A lot of Evgeny Malkin name drops in the chat today. Here's a couple here. What's up, Stefan? Nice to see Stefan. He joined us at Public House last week for our live show against the Bruins. If the team gets another Deneau type center, are we good till Hage develops? Salil follows up with, do we need a more offensive 2C? So
I think so, yes.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
I think the Montreal Canadiens need a play-driving offensive center, period.
Yeah.
And a player that can put up, at minimum 60, 65 points per season. At minimum. Yeah. That's where I see a 2C. Ideally, the Canadiens will want a center that could perform to that, the same way that at the height of I would say Colorado's run. Like Nazem Kadri was that. And then he went on that like 90-point season that was absolutely insane. But before that, that's exactly what Kadri was. If Kadri were 27 years old, he'd be the perfect acquisition for the Montreal Canadiens.
My God. Yeah.
It would be exactly what the team needs. Physical, good down the middle, shoot first center, but great in transition, a good defensive acumen. That's the kind of player that they would need. Now, find those guys. Those are difficult.
Well, that's it. A perfect world does not exist, unfortunately, right? Because that would be the perfect scenario.
The Canadiens have been patient enough to wait, for those kinds of players. And I think, for example, like they had their eye on Noah Dobson for a while. And then when he became available, they jumped right at him, and I think that's why he's a player I've liked for a while. And now seeing him on the Canadiens slowly but surely playing his best games, I thought he played his best game as a Montreal Canadien against Boston, for example. And that'll continue to happen as he gets more used to playing man-to-man instead of zone defense. But offensively, he's starting to find his juice. So the same would apply to any other players that you would bring in here. The Canadiens will have a specific persona in check. And I think they're going to wait till one of those personas becomes available. They're not going to throw themselves, into a situation where they have to trade for Ryan O'Reilly. You know who has to trade for a Ryan O'Reilly? LA. You know who has to trade for a Nazem Kadri?
LA.
Minnesota.
Well, you've been talking about the center market in Los Angeles since, before the Phil Deneau deal, I guess, but and Minnesota, I mean, my gosh, Minnesota in overtime. I mean, it's not fair. Quinn Hughes to Kaprizov, in the back of the net, and the Minnesota Wild won a big game for them. Final thoughts here on this live, the first since the Christmas break. Happy holidays to everybody as we move into 2026. I hope you're enjoying the vacation if you're lucky enough to be on one. But it's the Canadiens back to work tonight against the Tampa Bay Lightning, who scored 2 in the first and won a 4-2 game. They shut out Florida in that third period yesterday. But what version of the Lightning are we going to see today? And what's the strategy at hand if you're Martin St. Louis? I mean, that was an unbelievable game. The Florida Panthers had 10 power plays. The Lightning had 6 power plays. Florida scored once on their 10 power play opportunities. And what are we talking about? 130, 140, 136 minutes in penalties combined between those two teams. Like to see Montreal come out games. Love to see Montreal come out and press these Lightning tonight, who I would imagine logically you'd think they'd be kind of tired and their first game from the break, and they played that type of game against Florida last night.
I don't know. I don't buy the tired. These are professional athletes coming.
Travis Green said his Ottawa Senators were tired against the Leafs yesterday. He said that.
That's a sad excuse.
Yeah,
it's a sad excuse. And you know what? I'm not even going to take a shot at the Senators. They do it to themselves.
Why not? It's so fun.
But when it comes to watching the Canadiens against Tampa is too smart a team. They play intelligently, and they'll expend energy in bursts. And I think that's where they're excessively dangerous. And they're a team that's very known to ride momentum. So I think it's a trap to consider that they're tired and the Canadiens can walk over them. Like, no. Keep it structured, keep it together. And I think that you'd be in a very strong position to keep things going as long as you get the saves you need from Jacob Fowler, which he's shown a consistent ability to do so. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. Where the game's going to be played is down the middle. That's where the game's going to be played. And I'm interested to see how a guy like Martin St. Louis is going to go about that, because we've seen him in the past be over-reliant on Nick Suzuki's line from a defensive standpoint. Right. It was one game against Boston. The third period was a penalty palooza. So we didn't really get a good idea of what the matchup game could look like. Well, let's see what it looks like against a team like Tampa Bay, because you also have to factor in this. There's a serious chance that the Canadiens could play Tampa Bay if they make the playoffs.
Yeah.
How does that matchup work? So I'm interested to see how Martin St. Louis goes about this, because it could also be indicative as to what the Canadiens have, what their plan is, and what they might need to add in order to keep up against some of these teams.
Hey, look at this defense for John Cooper. Declan Carlisle, Maxwell Crozier, Charles-Edouard Daoust, who we saw in that 6-1 drubbing, the guy who had his fingerprints all over that one, J.J. Moser, Darren Radish, who played almost 9 minutes on the power play, almost 7 minutes shorthanded yesterday. Steve Santini, who played less than 8 minutes total in that hockey game yesterday. So some big injuries on the Lightning blue line. And you're not, I highly doubt you're going to see Andrei Vasilevsky, who's played, 5 or 6 straight games and was in goal in Florida last night. So the Canadiens will get their second look at Johansson. He was the goaltender of record when the Lightning steamrolled the Canadiens recently in a 6-1 final. So it should be a fun game today, Marco.
Jesus. And no McDonough either.
And no McDonough. No.
So their top pair is
Hedman,
JJ Moser and Darren Radish, which is usually their second.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Canadiens have absolutely no excuse.
They're set up tonight.
I think Martin St. Louis, again, this is a discipline thing. This is where you see whether or not a young team is maturing.
Yeah.
Because they were already a little hurt when they were riding into the Bell Center at the beginning of the month of December. Mm-hmm. This is like a trench war just happened on Tampa Bay's roster. You think the Canadiens have injuries? This is insane.
Exactly.
They're missing Cernak. They're missing their top 3 defensemen. And then you just have JJ Moser, who, by the way, just signed a nice extension, 6.75 for 8 years. Great pickup in that trade with the Utah Mammoth for Mikhail Sergachev. I think both teams are very happy with how things turned out there. One thing I will say, though, the Canadiens have to have the killer instinct here. Too many times against backup goalies, they've tried to get cute, just getting pucks to the net and creating chaos. That's exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, should be a good one. I think it's set up, and I like Marco's point about we'll see if the mature tendencies. And look, Tampa also has a couple of forwards that are barely used too. So John Cooper's, managing the swings of the injuries and the season. But with all of that being said, you never want to take the Lightning for granted or think it's going to be an easy day of work. That's a fool's game, no doubt. All right, Marco, nice to be back. I think we shook the rust off quite well. Thanks for liking and subscribing the video as always, and we'll be back tomorrow morning to recap this evening's contest. So make sure to tune back in and spend some of your holidays with us. Marco, thanks as always, man. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and look forward to tomorrow's live after the Habs and Lightning.
Yes, thank you so much to the fans. Again, the subscription count has exploded thanks to you guys over the last 3 weeks. It's been really, really fun. So we invite you all that haven't to follow the page and subscribe, because we have a lot of content coming to you between now and February. We'll also be covering the Olympic break and making sure you guys are up to date on information with the Habs and the Olympics. So give us a sub, give us a like, and we hope to catch you here tomorrow morning as we hopefully, for you guys, talk about a Montreal Canadiens victory in Tampa Bay.
Indeed. Enjoy your Sunday, everybody.